The sales mostly had to be made of an evening because the only person who was entitled to sign a hire purchase agreement was the husband. And in most cases, sales had to be made on a Friday or Saturday evening when the pay packet came in, otherwise you didn't get the deposit.
I'm now going to look at the various parts of the vacuum cleaner in greater detail. First, the motor. Electric motors are rather baffling devices, but they all depend basically on the ability of electricity to magnetise things. If I wrap a bit of wire round a nail... Oops. Oh dear, I've got it tangled up. The more turns, the stronger the magnetism. I'm going to use 12 volts DC from a car battery. And of course you must never ever use mains for something like this. The nail becomes magnetic when I complete the circuit, and when I break it again, most of the magnetism is lost. And if I wrap the wire around a little copper tube and hold it above the nail, then the magnetic attraction will pull the nail off the table. Just getting slightly warm. This is an industrial electromagnet. The coil of wires in here, and this is the lump of metal it pulls in. This one's actually out of a fruit machine. It's the device that pushes the coins out when you win. Well, I use these devices a lot on the machines that I make. I made this for a local solicitor. It's a portrait of the founder of the firm, his great-uncle. And he wanted to be able to control it so it would react to his clients' sometimes dubious confidences. In the end, he got cold feet and placed the control box so that the clients themselves could use it. Well, if you look at the back, you can see that the device that makes the wig go up in the air is one of these electromagnets. And by themselves, these electromagnets can only produce this rather jerky, linear action. But it's actually not too difficult to use the electromagnetic attraction to make something rotate.
To show the principles of a simple electric motor, I've made a motor out of virtual rubbish. Nails, hacksaw blade, an old needle, a cork, and a dog food can. The commutator is the part in the vacuum cleaner motor I've made from a cork with wires running up there.
It acts as a sort of rotating switch. Each wire is attached to a coil. When the wires are in contact with the brass strips, current passes through. So at any time, only one pair of coils are energized.
These pair of coils here are magnetized by the electric current, and they're attracted to this pair of coils. Now, when it pulls to there, these coils switch off, and it brings on the next pair of coils, which are attracted to there. Of course, they switch off, bringing in the next pair, causing a rotating motion. I'll switch on.
The vacuum cleaner motor doesn't at first sight look like Rex's tin can motor, but if you look inside you can see it has a lot of the same elements. This is the commutator, the rotating contacts. These are the coils of wire rotating around the shaft, and these are the coils of wire around the outside, making them both magnetic. Well, in fact, there are many different types of electric motor, but they all depend on the basic ability of electricity to produce magnetism. It's really quite difficult to imagine how inconvenient the world must have been without any electric motors. Most of the machines in the home depend on them. Vacuum cleaners, power tools, washing machines, fridges, tape recorders, and countless other gadgets. Steam engines, their predecessors, were hot and heavy and needed several hours stoking to get up pressure before they would work. Factories used to have a single steam engine connected to every machine in the place by a very elaborate set of belts and clutches. This was not very convenient or safe in a factory, and totally impractical in the home.
Whoa!
The bit that actually does the sucking is the enclosed fan next to the motor. I can show you where the air goes if I hold some smoke over it. You can see that all the air is actually drawn straight through the middle of the motor to get to the fan. And the reason for this is that it helps to keep the motor cool. You can often feel the air coming out of the end of a vacuum cleaner is quite warm. And without this air passing through the motor, it would very quickly overheat. The fan itself works with these rotating vanes that whiz round and fling the air outwards. The air comes in the middle and the vanes go round, flinging the air outwards, and then there's a second set of vanes that doesn't rotate, a static set, and these channel the air back to the middle again. Then there's another set, a second set of rotating vanes that fling the air outwards, and finally there's a second set of static vanes that channel the air back to the middle again. And having these two stages doubles the suction power. Well, one surprising thing about these fans is that they actually need less power to work when the inlet's blocked up. I can show you this with this meter which shows how much current the motor is using. And if I turn it on, you can actually hear the pitch of the motor rising when I block the inlet up, and that's because it's actually running faster. But of course it's also overheating because there's no air passing through it, so it's not really a very good idea. The power of the fan is quite surprising. Here we fixed the outlet of a vacuum cleaner to a plastic bag. The air pressure in the bag can quite comfortably lift my van off the ground. The vacuum cleaner actually has the power to inflate things on a much larger scale. This is a pig built for the Pink Floyd by a local firm. Once it's inflated, a miniature car vacuum cleaner is enough to compensate for the air lost through any holes and keep it full of air. And a full-size vacuum cleaner can keep enormous things inflated. The only time I've ever used a vacuum cleaner was for a machine that didn't need any of its impressive power. This is a collecting box I made for an ecological charity called Common Ground. It's a sort of pun on its name, showing a bit of ground being shared by different sorts of creature. The ground is actually a bit of rubber. I did my first experiments holding bits of rubber over a vacuum cleaner nozzle. Underneath, each footprint is connected to the suction pump at the bottom here by one of these hoses via a valve, each one by a separate valve, actually out of the washing machines. And this timer down the bottom here turns the valves on in sequence. The last important part of the vacuum cleaner is the dust bag, which acts as the filter. The paper or cloth contains minute holes which trap most of the dirt but let the air pass straight through. Of course, any bits of dirt that are smaller than the size of these holes, which are about 1/200th of a millimetre in diameter, will pass straight through the bag. I can show you this with this smoke cartridge that contains minute particles of red dye. If I put it next to the nozzle, you'll see the dye come straight through the machine and out through the grill here. Oh, I forgot to turn it on. Normally about 15% of household dust is below this critical size and passes straight through the machine. Rex used to repair domestic appliances and found people often didn't realise this.
Sometimes I used to be called out to a machine that wasn't working, and the customer had actually fitted a plastic bag inside the cloth bag so they could dispose of the dirt easily. Well, this of course completely blocked the airflow and there was no suction at all, and obviously it wouldn't work. Even the disposable paper bags need changing quite frequently. Some customers used to use one paper bag and empty it continuously, and they do lose their efficiency, and the little pores in the paper get blocked with dust, and they just don't work. Occasionally, one or two clients had actually had a machine for 10 years or so, and they'd still got the original packet of paper bags, and they'd only ever used one.
The vacuum cleaner is really quite a simple machine. Just a motor, a fan and a dust bag. But it does have a particularly hard life, being pushed and tugged about all the time. Although they used to be sold with lifetime guarantees, today they rarely last more than a few years. The modern vacuum cleaner may not be perfect, but it is extraordinarily good value for money. In 1950, a vacuum cleaner cost about the same amount as the average weekly wage. Today, it costs a lot less than half that. An enormous amount of energy and cunning has gone into reducing the manufacturing costs, and perhaps for their price today, we can't really expect them to last for very long. Although vacuum cleaners are now rather flimsy and unsatisfying machines, and their short lifespan is ecologically very unsound, they do retain more character than most other household machines, and I can't help rather liking them.